Something is off about Burkina Faso right now. Not in the way headlines usually suggest. Not chaos, not collapse, not crisis. The opposite, actually. Things are moving too quietly for a country that Western institutions once treated as permanently unstable. That silence is the first clue. Over the past months, a series of financial and administrative changes have taken place across West Africa that normally would have triggered loud reactions, warnings from lenders, urgent notes from rating agencies, and strongly worded op-eds about risk and instability. Instead, the language has been strangely muted, technical, almost sleepy.
Who is associated in a wrong way with this history to come and say the problem is something else, not what it is exactly? Don't you have a problem? So are you going to be able to address the root cause of this problem when your first thing is to distort the facts and evidence?
That alone should raise suspicion. Burkina Faso is not supposed to be the country where new financial plumbing works smoothly. Not after years of being framed as aid-dependent. Not after being cut off from the usual approval circuits. Not after openly challenging inherited political and economic discipline. And yet things that used to stall are settling. Transactions that once took time now arrive without ceremony. Regional payments that used to leak fees and delays are behaving as if distance no longer deserves punishment. No press conference announced this. No dramatic policy declaration explained it. That's what makes it interesting. So, what's really going on? Let's find out. What makes this moment harder to ignore is not what Burkina Faso is saying, but how little it is saying while systems continue to function. Countries under pressure usually narrate everything. They over-explain, they reassure, they plead their case to the international audience. Burkina Faso is not doing that. Instead, institutions inside the country are behaving as if continuity is assumed, as if tomorrow is already accounted for. That posture alone contradicts the dominant narrative that painted the country as temporary, fragile, and dependent on external supervision. Here's the uncomfortable question no one is asking out loud. Why does Burkina Faso appear to be integrating into new regional financial mechanisms without the usual turbulence, while commentary remains careful not to draw attention to it? If this were failing, the warnings would be loud. If it were harmless, it would be ignored. Instead, it is being downplayed. Downplaying is not neutrality, it is management. This is not the first time Africa has seen this pattern. Structural shifts that reduce external leverage rarely receive honest framing. They are described as upgrades, experiments, pilot programs, anything that keeps them from sounding directional. Direction implies agency. Agency implies sovereignty. Sovereignty implies permanence. And permanence is the one thing African states are rarely allowed to claim prematurely. Burkina Faso's case is particularly sensitive because it comes after a period of open friction with established financial and political hierarchies. The expectation, openly or not, was that isolation would slow the country down, economically, administratively, institutionally. That expectation has not aged well. What's emerging instead is a quieter reality. A country recalibrating how money moves inside its borders and across its immediate region without waiting for applause or reassurance. This is not a victory lap. It is not proof of success. It is something more basic and more dangerous to old assumptions. It is functionality. And functionality, when it appears where decline was predicted, demands investigation. Because systems do not accidentally work against expectation. When they do, it means someone is misreading the terrain or clinging to an outdated map. The question now is not whether Burkina Faso has changed. The real question is what exactly has changed underneath, and why those changes are being described as routine when their implications are anything but. That's where this investigation begins.
Let me tell you, we need to look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. President Traore is standing up. He is saying the natural resources in Burkina Faso, they belong to the people of Burkina Faso. Niger is doing the same thing. Mali is doing the same thing. Every leader must look at what's happening in the Sahel nations to say, like anybody else, you must take care of your people. You have your natural resources. You have everything you need to take care of your people. Why do you continue to be beggars? Look at what is being brought in by not only USAID, but all the NGOs in your country. It's peanuts. It's a joke that the African leaders should continue to be beggars of peanuts when you are looking and allowing billions to get out of your country year in and year out, if not trillions, in natural resources that your people should be benefiting from.
What's actually happening in Burkina Faso is not a rumor, not a theory, and not a pilot in the way that word is often used to stall attention. It is a live structural change unfolding inside West Africa's financial backbone. At the center of it sits the Banque Centrale des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, the regional central bank for the 8-country WEMU bloc. For years, BCEAO talked about modernizing payments the way institutions usually do, with white papers, consultations, and timelines that slipped quietly. That phase is over. The system has moved from study to operation. The core shift is simple but consequential. The region is wiring itself for instant interoperable payments that clear within the WAEMU system, not through external correspondent banks by default. This includes real-time settlement rails connecting banks, mobile money operators, and state systems, designed to function even when global intermediaries are not involved in the loop. This is not cryptocurrency. This is not a headline-grabbing new currency. This is the plumbing of money. And plumbing is where leverage hides. In practical terms, this means transfers that once passed through layers of approval, reconciliation delays, and fee-extracting middlemen are now settling regionally, faster and with fewer choke points. Banks and telecoms are being integrated into a shared clearing environment. Governments are aligning tax and treasury interfaces to see and settle flows in near real time. Burkina Faso is not waiting on the sidelines of this system, it is wired into it. That detail matters because the impact of payment infrastructure is not evenly distributed. The same rails produce different outcomes depending on a country's political posture, fiscal discipline, and tolerance for external oversight. Infrastructure does not decide politics, but it amplifies the politics already in place. Here's the part that rarely gets explained. For decades, West African money did not truly move inside West Africa without external visibility. Cross-border trade between neighbors often depended on banks and clearing mechanisms outside the region, introducing delays that were framed as compliance or risk management. Those delays were normalized. Their political effect was not. Every delay created dependence. Every intermediary created visibility. Every approval created leverage. The new system reduces, not eliminates, those frictions for regional trade. That distinction is important. This is not a global decoupling. It is a regional rebalancing. And regional rebalancing is enough to change behavior. In Burkina Faso, where informal trade has long been the real economy rather than a side effect, faster settlement changes incentives immediately. When money clears quickly, traders circulate more. When circulation increases, cash hoarding declines. When hoarding declines, visibility improves. When visibility improves, the state's ability to tax, plan, and discipline elites quietly increases. This is why payment systems are never neutral. Critically, this is happening without the usual choreography. There has been no rush to reassure donors, no public ritual of compliance signaling, no performative alignment with external financial narratives. The systems are being installed and used as if regional sufficiency were a given. That posture is new. It also explains why language around this shift has been so carefully flattened. In external coverage, these changes are described as efficiency upgrades or technical modernization. Those descriptions are not false, but they are incomplete. They strip the change of context, and context is where meaning lives. Efficiency for whom? Speed under whose authority? Visibility to which institutions? Those questions are rarely asked because answering them forces acknowledgement of something uncomfortable. That African states, when equipped with functional infrastructure, do not automatically behave as clients. They behave as governments. Burkina Faso's integration into this architecture lands differently because it follows a period of deliberate distancing from inherited financial discipline, reduced reliance on IMF programs, reassertion of state control in key sectors, a leadership that has shown willingness to absorb diplomatic and economic pressure rather than translate every decision into external approval language. Put simply, the same tool in a different political hand produces a different outcome. None of this guarantees success. Systems can be misused. Speed can facilitate corruption as easily as it can expose it. Digital visibility can empower states or overreach them. A country without tools is guaranteed to fail. A country with tools at least has a choice. Burkina Faso now has more choices than it did before. Not rhetorically, mechanically. That is the factual ground of this story. The next question is not whether this infrastructure exists, it does. The question is why its emergence in Burkina Faso feels different, why reactions are restrained, and why this particular country appears to gain more leverage from the same rails than others would. What turns a technical reform into a geopolitical event is never the technology itself. It's the context it lands in. And this is where Burkina Faso separates itself from every lazy comparison being made. On paper, nothing about Burkina Faso should make it an ideal beneficiary of new financial infrastructure. It is landlocked. It is under pressure. It is routinely described as fragile. That description has been repeated so often that it has hardened into an assumed truth. But assumptions age badly when circumstances change. Burkina Faso's difference is not innovation. It is posture. For years, the country was governed like a temporary project, managed rather than directed, supervised rather than trusted. Decisions were filtered through external expectations. Financial behavior was shaped by what would be acceptable elsewhere. Authority was fragmented, sometimes deliberately, to keep the state predictable and limited. That era ended abruptly. Under Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso stopped behaving like a caretaker administration. It began behaving like a state that expects resistance and plans anyway. This shift did not announce itself with ideology. It announced itself through decisions that carried consequences, and then absorbed those consequences without retreat. This matters because infrastructure responds to confidence. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Payment systems amplify intent. They do not create it. In a state that hesitates, faster rails produce faster leakage. In a state that consolidates authority, the same rails tighten discipline. That is the difference most commentary refuses to confront. Burkina Faso has spent the last period doing something unfashionable in international circles, centralizing control where fragmentation had become normal. Revenue streams once treated as negotiable were pulled back under state oversight. Security structures were reorganized to assert presence rather than outsource it. Political signaling shifted away from reassurance and toward execution. None of this made the country more comfortable to deal with. It made it more legible to itself. That internal legibility is what allows new systems to bite. When money moves faster in a fragmented state, it escapes faster. When it moves faster in a consolidated state, it becomes visible sooner. Visibility changes behavior, not just among traders, but among elites who built entire strategies around opacity. This is why Burkina Faso's participation in regional digital settlement cannot be read the same way as a similar upgrade elsewhere. The same wires run through different power structures, and power structures decide outcomes. There is a reason external institutions prefer reforms to occur before authority is asserted, not after. Reforms that arrive early can be shaped. Reforms that arrive late encounter resistance. Burkina Faso's timing disrupts that comfort. This is also why reactions have been calibrated rather than confrontational. Challenging a reform is easier when a state is divided, apologetic, or dependent. It is harder when a state has already demonstrated a willingness to endure isolation rather than reverse course. Burkina Faso has already crossed that psychological line. the country has shown it will take the cost up front rather than pay it indefinitely through delay and dependency. That signal changes how every subsequent technical development is interpreted, even if no one says it out loud. Systems are being deployed as if continuity is assumed. There is no sense of provisionality, no framing of pilot or trial as an excuse to retreat. Institutions are aligning internally, not waiting for external validation before proceeding. That tells you something about expectations at the top. This is not recklessness. It is a calculated bet that the costs of waiting have begun to exceed the costs of acting. For Burkina Faso, waiting was not neutral. It was erosive. It weakened state authority, normalized informal workarounds, and rewarded those who could navigate opacity best. Faster settlement reverses that incentive structure. And here is where the reality asserts itself without needing slogans. African states have never lacked capacity. They have lacked the room to enforce it. When that room opens, even partially, the effects are immediate and uncomfortable for those who benefited from the old delays. This is why Ibrahim Traore's role cannot be reduced to personality or rhetoric. His relevance lies in timing. He is governing at a moment when technical capacity and political will are finally overlapping. That overlap is rare. It is also volatile. Because once systems begin to function under consolidated authority, expectations change quickly. Citizens expect results. Traders expect consistency. Elites expect scrutiny. And external actors recalibrate how much pressure they can apply without triggering defiance. That is the quiet power shift happening beneath the headlines. African countries were never controlled primarily through their currencies. The symbols on the banknotes mattered far less than where money was allowed to breathe. For decades, the real choke point sat between intention and settlement. A trader could agree on a price, a government could approve a budget, a company could invoice a partner. But between decision and completion sat an invisible corridor of permissions. Correspondent banks, clearing windows, compliance reviews, risk flags raised thousands of kilometers away by institutions that had no stake in local stability, only in enforcing global order as they defined it. This is where power lived, not in saying no outright, but in saying not yet. Not yet is the most effective form of discipline ever invented. It doesn't provoke resistance, it induces adjustment. People don't fight not yet. They work around it. They adapt their ambitions downward. They delay investments. They accept inefficiency as normal. Over time, entire economies internalize this rhythm. Africa was never frozen. It was paced. And pacing is harder to expose than coercion because it masquerades as prudence. This is why payment infrastructure matters more than speeches or summits. When money must pass through external corridors to be considered legitimate, sovereignty becomes conditional. You can govern, but only at the speed others allow. You can trade, but only after being observed. You can plan, but only within windows that suit someone else's risk appetite. That arrangement survived because it was presented as a technical necessity, not a political choice. But technology doesn't just enable control. It can also reveal where control was hiding. What is changing now in West Africa, and why Burkina Faso's case feels different, is that regional settlement is no longer being treated as a second-class option. Money is beginning to clear where it is used, not where it is supervised. That doesn't abolish global finance. It reorders its importance. And reordering importance is how hierarchies weaken without collapsing overnight. When money stops passing through certain corridors, visibility shifts. External institutions lose granular insight. Internal institutions gain it. That is the trade-off no one advertises. For years, African governments were told that transparency required external oversight. In practice, it often meant transparency upward and opacity inward. Foreign partners saw flows clearly. Domestic institutions saw fragments. Now that the balance is beginning to tilt, here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Faster regional settlement allows states to see economic activity they never fully captured before. Informal trade doesn't magically disappear, but it becomes harder to hide at scale. Leakages that were once blamed on capacity issues become traceable patterns. This is where digital finance stops being neutral and starts being political. Because visibility is not just about fighting corruption, it's about deciding who gets to look first. Burkina Faso's leadership understands this, even if it doesn't frame it publicly. You don't challenge inherited financial discipline and then accidentally adopt tools that increase state visibility. That alignment is intentional. It signals something important. The government is not afraid of seeing what it governs. That alone separates serious states from performative ones. For decades, Africa was encouraged to liberalize before it could observe itself properly. Open the system first, understand it later. The result was predictable. Openness benefited those already positioned to extract value, while states chased shadows. Burkina Faso is reversing that sequence. It is tightening observation before expanding integration. That is not anti-market, it is statecraft. This is why reactions remain restrained. If external actors openly oppose this shift, they admit it reduces their leverage. If they celebrate it, they legitimize African autonomy. So they do neither. They describe it as neutral, inevitable, technical. But neutrality is a story we tell when we want to avoid naming winners and losers. And there are winners and losers here. The winners are African states that can now act with more immediacy inside their own regions. The losers are systems that relied on delay as a governing tool. Burkina Faso sits at the center of this tension because it has already demonstrated that it will endure pressure rather than retreat. That makes its use of new infrastructure feel more permanent, and permanence is what unsettles institutions built on reversibility. What's at stake is not whether Burkina Faso becomes rich overnight. That's a childish metric. What's at stake is whether African governments can sustain momentum without external pacing. Momentum changes everything. It changes how citizens judge competence. It changes how businesses plan. It changes how much patience people have for inherited excuses. Once momentum exists, even briefly, it becomes a reference point. People remember what functioning felt like. And memory is the enemy of control by delay. This is the quiet reversal unfolding now. Not a loud break with the world, not an exit from global finance, but a recalibration of who sets the tempo. Burkina Faso is not claiming perfection, it is claiming initiative. So let us know in the comments section. Can Burkina Faso be stopped? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.